Now that Assassin's Creed 2020 or Kingdom is just a few months away, it makes sense to talk about some of the things I hope the game doesn't include. These can be from Odyssey, earlier games, or just things I think Ubisoft might include that I think they shouldn't. Now the first thing that I hope the next Assassin's Creed game doesn't have is any kind of forced fan service. Now, not fan service itself, because despite the fact it's got sort of a negative connotation over the last few years, fan service on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. What I don't want though is forced fan service. By this I mean fan service that's clearly there just to be a big shocking moment rather than something that makes sense in terms of the game itself. Odyssey and its DLC was so full of these forced fan service moments that it was one of the worst things out of those for me. You had Darius doing the leap of faith, the modern day and ancestor story getting crossed over, Aya being a descendant of Cassandra, and just so many other things that make no sense. And it's a shame because Origins did fan service so well, like the scene where the assassin insignia is revealed on the beach was just an incredible scene. So I hope that if any fan service is involved, it's back to that standard. Now the next thing I've got on the list is bad or poorly done skill trees. We've had skill trees in the series ever since 2017 with Origins, and how the games used to be was you get different skills and abilities as you progress through the games, and that was so great because it really added to the progression and the feeling that you were becoming an assassin and becoming more skilled as you went through. And it's fine that the skill trees have replaced that. I just wish the skill trees themselves would be better if that was going to be the main way of sort of progressing through the game. My issue with the skill trees is that there's only really a few skills that are actually useful, and you have to buy all these other skills to get to them. And instead of it feeling like you're building up, all these different skills and abilities, it feels like you're just on a track to get one certain ability or one skill. And in a game like Odyssey, you can only use 4 or 5 or 6 at a time. So it gets to a point where you'll have got all these skills and have bought all these other skills to get there, but only a fraction of them are actually useful. Whereas in the older games, you'd gain all these abilities and you could use them all sort of interchangeably. But whether Ubisoft is going to go back to a more linear kind of game structure is yet to be seen. Now the next thing I have on the list is a bad leveling system. In any RPG, the leveling system in the game sort of makes or breaks the progression, and the new Assassin's Creed games aren't any different. The best leveling systems I find are the ones that encourage you to level up and sort of reward you for doing so, and my issue with the new games is that it does reward you for doing so, but the leveling is so slow and grindy that it just doesn't feel satisfying like a good leveling system should. This is much more an issue in Odyssey than it is Origins, that you have to do so many side quests and side activities to actually be able to progress and move through the story, and doing a few wasn't so bad, especially in Origins when the side content was much better and fleshed out. But in Odyssey you just have to run through so many side activities and side content to actually get to the main game, and the worst part is it's there just to encourage you to buy boosters. So the only way to get through the game enjoyably is to use the bit of stones glitch or buy boosters, and that shouldn't be how any RPG functions. And I'd like to think that the leveling in the next game would be much more geared towards having to actually play the game rather than spend more money, but knowing Ubisoft, I'm quite doubtful of that. Out of everything I've included on this list, this one's definitely the least likely to be included again, but still I would hate if it was, and that's the bird. Out of everything that I've included on the list, this is the least likely to be included, but still I thought I'd mention it because I'd hate if it was, and that's the bird. The first time we saw any sort of bird you could use to scout out camps and locations was in Origins through Senu, and that was fine because it was explained that Bayek and Senu had sort of a connection, where Senu could sort of signal and speak to Bayek to tell him where different enemies and things were. It was then included again in Odyssey, which I kind of took issue with because they didn't really explain the connection between Icaros and Cassandra or Alexios at all. If they included it in a third game, then it seems like it's kind of run its course, because as kind of gimmicky as it was in Origins, it seemed like it was a personal thing to Bayek and to that game. So then to have it in another game and then even a third after that would just feel so repetitive and dull. So I hope Ubisoft really don't include any sort of bird in the next game. Now this one's the biggest and most unlikely thing on this list, but I thought I'd put it here anyway because it's something I really don't want, and that's repetitive side content. It was my biggest issue with Odyssey, it was an issue I had with Origins as well, and that's that the side content is so dull and boring after so long. Now this is including both side quests and side activities like camps. Now to start off with the quests, they weren't near as bad in Origins, but they were still quite repetitive. You'd have the odd really good ones that would follow up on main storylines, But then you'd have ones where it'd just be each time you'd have to break someone out of a base or go to a base and collect a certain thing, and it just consisted oftentimes of breaking into a base, killing people and doing a certain thing there. And Odyssey was much worse with this. You'd have different stories related to each quest, but each quest at its core felt the same besides a few of them. And the side activities had basically the same issues with the side quests, just ended up feeling really repetitive in the end. Like, the amount of bandit camps you have to run through to get 100% is ridiculous, especially when they all feel like basically the same thing. So if Ubisoft could expand and diversify the side activities and general side content in the next game, the game and the game's world would be so much better for it. But yeah, those are 5 of the things that I don't want to see in the next Assassin's Creed game. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.